Hi guys, welcome to my YouTube channel. My name is Kieran and I help people using a spiritual perspective. And it's often that intro that I've given to people that makes me hesitate because, when I hear people say that they're spiritual, my first instinct is to just assume that they're full of shit and to not listen to anything that they say, even though I might describe myself as a spiritual person. So when I was younger and I got into this sort of perspective, let's say, I was much more naive and willing to believe certain information, which in the long run only really ended up hurting me, which was unfortunate, right? But that's a whole separate issue. The point of this video is to clarify really my beliefs and what it means from my perspective to be spiritual or to even have a spiritual awakening, right? So first thing is first, I don't believe in God. I think that that's a ridiculous idea. I think it's ridiculous based on the premise that God is simply just fear of death with rules. That's kind of what it seems like. Kind of makes sense, really, when you think about it. You know, let's take the first gods that ever existed. Weather gods, right? Rain god, sun god, moon god, right? Things that really basically had to do with our being able to live, right? If there was a flood, then everybody died, or they didn't get to make their rice, or whatever the hell people are doing in Egypt. Did they make rice in Egypt? Who knows? But that's not the point. The point is that the first gods were obviously created in order to, help people's society grow. That was the point. As soon as humans could actually start making a community and a civilization and society and start living together, as soon as really humans started, or I should say, as soon as humans stopped just hunting and gathering, there became a need to organize a proper belief system, right? And there's some sort of quote from Voltaire, and if you don't know who that is, then I assume look it up, I guess, French philosopher, but there's a quote from him that's something along the lines of, if humans did not, or if God was not real, then humans would have invented him anyway, right? So the point is that you need some kind of hierarchy for the human brain to really exist throughout humanity, really, because this idea is like, well, what happens after death? What do we do? What goes on? How meaningful are our lives if we can't pinpoint this person or idea that we could put above ourselves? And that is essentially my fundamental flaw with not only religion, but the idea of God in itself, is because it puts this idea, often a person based on our own image, above everybody, right? And it's kind of funny that we would make a god seem like a human, because humans are the most arrogant species on the planet. I don't really see like whales just thinking to themselves like, oh yeah, we're better than everybody. But maybe they are, I don't know. I've heard rumors that whales are all racist, so I really don't know what is true about that. But humans obviously have gotten to a point where we had to create something, right? Now, it doesn't necessarily matter what's true. There's dozens and dozens and dozens of religions. The concept of God and the way that we framed it is more than likely nonsense, and it doesn't really make any sense. And it certainly doesn't make any sense to me, and I refuse to participate in that. But that in of itself is already a bit of a divide, because there's plenty of spiritual people who will claim that a God exists, and they, of course, still continue to put it above themselves. And even with New Age spirituality, people treat it like it's a totem pole, that there's these levels of being spiritual, and you got to get to the top, and when you're closer to the top, then therefore you're better off than where you were, and you're better off than those people over there, and you get to judge them safely from the top of the tower, so to speak. So this idea of any belief system that's based on the individual being below something, I don't prescribe to, and I see it filled with logical holes, loopholes, nonsensical things, plot holes, whatever you want to call it. It just doesn't really make a lot of sense. And then to create a religion out of it, in of itself, is just the definition of repression, right? There's nothing necessarily wrong with believing in a higher power. Again, I think it would make sense for humans to do that. The creating a religion out of it, that doesn't necessarily make sense. That's just a good scheme for money, really. And power, of course, right? But barring all of that, then what do I believe? How can I claim myself to be a spiritual person if I don't believe in the idea of a man-made God? And the answer is kind of simple. Instead of thinking that things are above me and that everything is above me, I think it's more cyclical, right? And again, it's just my belief system. I can't prove any of this. The only thing I can really prove to you is that I need a haircut. That's really all I got for you. Other than that, this is all, of course, conjecture, right? So for me, I think that everything is cyclical. I think it's all connected, right? You can think of it like Star Wars if you want. If you've ever seen Star Wars, then that, I suppose, without the language and without the force powers, as fun as that would be. But more to do with the idea of the philosophy of it, which is that everything is connected, right? The synchronicities, the things that I've experienced, the interconnection that I felt, these things I believe. And it's led me to this term, which I haven't actually seen in popular media, so I'm going to pretend at least that I made it up, which is grounded spirituality. And to me, what that means is this ability to first verify things through your own personal experience and then see if you can apply it outwards. And if you can't, then you should take it with a grain of salt, right? So lots of these ideas that we have in spirituality, these concepts, we don't actually know whether they're true or not, and we often just believe them anyway, but we can't really verify them through ourselves, right? But one of the things that anybody can verify is presence, right? Anybody can verify the presence of their own soul, okay? And so that would be another part. Do I believe in a soul? Yeah, I suppose I do. I don't necessarily think that the word soul might encapsulate everything that truly lies within the human essence, you know. I don't know how you want to describe that, but it's really the best word that we got in English anyway, so I'm going to go ahead and use that. So do I believe in that? Yes, because I can verify it. How can I verify it? Through meditation, right? Through sitting still, through presence, through maybe just being alive and without an expectation of the next couple of minutes, the next couple of hours, just to exist in yourself. And what happens is the longer that you meditate, the longer that you sit still, the longer that you get this idea that you can actually get this awareness of yourself. Like you're thinking these thoughts. Well, hello, my name is whatever's going through your head, potato chips, who knows. And then you can have this awareness like, okay, there's something thinking that, but then who's listening, right? And then there's your awareness of awareness. Because then you start to think, okay, well then there's clear awareness of what's going on within me. And now next what I can do is I can actually go a step farther and I can actually become aware of the awareness that I'm having. And you start to get to this point where you don't even need to have thoughts to recognize something is true. And you can verify this presence within you. You can almost hear it in a sense. It doesn't come in a sort of logical, mental way, you know. Usually thoughts, from my perspective and my experience, they usually come like this. Whereas like this energy or this power of, let's again say the soul, it comes up from here. And it's something that I've been able to verify dozens and dozens of times in my life. And it's something that's really never left my side. Whereas the information that is bountiful within spirituality, I've believed some of it. I stopped believing it. There's lots of different ideas, things, spirit guides, angel numbers, pendulums, tarot cards, all this different stuff. Sometimes it's true, sometimes it's not. Law of attraction, more often than not, just this idea of really manipulating people. There's all these kinds of scams and schemes and improvable, improbable sorts of ideas that people base their entire lives on without actually being able to verify it, right? And that kind of stuff is dangerous. And that's the stuff that I've stepped away from. And I think that it gives spirituality a bad name. And it's exactly why I would be wary of people who just automatically claim that they're spiritual. It's not something that I need to advertise to people. And even this idea of being spiritual, I think a lot of people, again, disagree with what it means to be spiritual. Right? People can't even agree if something like soulmates or past lives are real, but they claim to be spiritual, right? So not everybody agrees on the same information, and that's the point. You don't need to. In fact, it's probably better to not just accept everything as true. But what is a good idea is to verify things through yourself, through this process of grounded spirituality, which is what I try to do. So my belief system is based upon my experience, of course, the things that I've dealt with, both positive and negative, and as well as this idea of philosophy, in a sense, critical thinking, and the likelihood of my own feelings being real or maybe not being real, based upon some illusions and stuff like that. So fundamentally, there's this saying, or it's I didn't create it. It's certainly something I've seen thousands of times, and it's, we're not a human having a human experience, or a human having a spiritual experience. You're a spiritual being having a human experience, and I still believe that. The I don't know if the consequences is the right word, but the layers of that might look different, and it certainly looked different in my life as I've gotten older. But fundamentally, I still believe that. I still believe in this process of being here for a reason. But it's a reason that I would like to come up with. I believe the point of a spiritual awakening, and maybe spirituality in general, and the point of being here, is to understand ourselves, is to fully understand ourselves. And when you need to understand yourself, and when that's your driving force, when you feel that deep down, which often spiritual people do, it looks different for other people, of course, but you often go through things that maybe seem irrelevant at the time, or difficult, or impossible. And yet you look back later on and you think, oh, I understand, because that really helped me understand myself. Failed relationships, failed marriages, having kids, injuries, getting sick, chronic pain, breakups, heartbreaks, romantic relationships, spiritual relationships, friends, moving away, jobs, new hobbies. All this stuff helps you understand yourself. And it's why people who often go through these spiritual awakenings, this process of understanding yourself at a deeper and spiritual level, they often have a very difficult life, and they come from a difficult background, because all of that pain and suffering and guilt or shame, whatever it may be, it helps people grow, right? So I reject this idea of not just organized religion and the idea of a man-made God, but I also reject New Age spirituality. I reject anything that's just information that anybody can find online that people treat as true and adamantly defend it, while another 50% of people say the exact opposite, but yet still claim to believe in the same exact sort of thing, right? For example, lots of spiritual people, half of them will say twin flames are real, the other half will say twin flames are not real. And then the half of the people that say they are real will not agree on what it means to be a twin flame. So this is just a small example of spirituality. And even the name twin flame makes anybody that isn't spiritual, or the other half of those people that are spiritual, cringe. It just makes them think, like, what the fuck? What are you talking about? It's not a great look for spirituality to base all of our belief systems upon something that was kind of taken and reused and recycled. And you can look at history and see where it's been taken from. And it's the benefit of history, is you can see where things come from. And I don't like that stuff. I used to, but I don't anymore. Now it's not so much about a label. It doesn't matter to me if someone's a soulmate or a twin flame or a past life connection. It's more about, what can I feel with this person, and how is it showing up in my life every single day? Right? There's certainly people in my life that I will not throw a label at, but definitely come into my life and they do something special for me, and they haven't left, and they continue to show up in such a way that surprises me, right? There's a person in my life like that, and I would never put a label on that woman, but I can verify the feelings and the information first through me, and I don't need a label. I don't need to think about it in a certain way. It's just a feeling, right? And it's something I can verify, like I said, several times. So this idea of even New Age spirituality, I kind of reject a lot of the information, because I think that it's harmful and it gives spirituality a bad name. If people talked about spirituality in ways a lot more like Jeff Foster, probably a bunch of other people who I'm not coming up with at this moment. Jeff Foster I like him a lot. This idea of rejecting this crazy woohoo, sort of anti-science, anti-logic, anti-feeling, and a lot of modern spirituality is just this hierarchy system, just like religion. It makes a lot of people feel bad for not believing in the same stuff, and that's not even the point of my video. My point of this video is not even to say you should all stop believing what you believe. I don't really want you to think like me. I want you to think like yourself. That would be great. If you verified your own information through your own intuition and intellect and experience and feelings and emotions and logic, and just used every ounce of intelligence and intuition that you have to formulate your belief systems and opinions, and allow them to change when new information comes in. Because what you needed to believe at 23 or 26 or 30 or 32 or 40 is not necessarily going to be the same thing, nor is it supposed to be. Again, the point of this is to understand yourself, not get to a point where you suddenly think, all right, well, I got all the information I need. That's good enough for me. I'm flying high. I'm going to go ahead and just keep thinking this way. That often doesn't work. I've changed my belief systems probably 3 or 4 times just since going through this spiritual awakening. So I wouldn't say that everything is set in stone, right? Beliefs change. And this is the point, even again, of this video. In 3 years, I might do another one and it might be slightly different. You know what I mean? That's kind of the point. The point is, at this moment, Tuesday, November 18th, 2025, this is what I feel. This is what I believe. And it's important to share that with others because, there's certain amount of community and I don't know, this respect and this obligation I feel where I don't really want to lead others astray, right? I mean, I don't have 40, 60, 70,000 subscribers. And I'm not even sure I would want more than that, really, to be honest, because it comes with lists of complications. I don't want to be in a position where I would ever give people the wrong information, which would ruin their life. I don't want to be that kind of guy, right? So the best thing that I can do for people is be honest and give them this kind of heads up as to where I'm at, where they're at, where they might like to be. And for hopefully any people that do discover spirituality and go through a process where maybe they aren't going to be led astray, and they might find someone like me or Jeff Foster or someone more popular than both of us, and they might think to themselves, yeah, okay, I get this, this makes sense. This guy's trying to be honest. They're not trying to fill my head with nonsense. They don't want any money. There's nothing like that. It's just information. It's free information that you can agree or disagree with, but I would never ask anybody to pay for it, right? And that's important. It's important to offer spirituality, I believe, in a way that's accessible and affordable to a lot of people, right? And that's the point of this YouTube channel. It's to help people understand perspectives through a new kind of lens, to understand themselves through a different perspective, a different way of thinking. That kind of stuff is important, and I think that that's really what spirituality is all about. It's that assistance of self and that assistance towards others. It's not about how much money can you manifest in 1 year, and look at you, top of the totem pole, you're doing it better than all the other so-called spiritual people. It's not about that. It's about connection. It's about understanding oneself.